Back here with the All 32 pod, Mike Giardi alongside Will Parkinson. As always, it is Monday, January 6th. Week 18 is done. Playoff football is on the horizon. However, there is Black Monday, which we'll get into, not necessarily, at least to this point, as crazy as we might have thought. The games on Sunday, low-key, stunk.
Yep.
But there were a few games that had some implications, so we'll get into that in a second. A reminder, of course, the show brought to you by Prize Picks, the exclusive daily fantasy partner of the CLNS Media Network. And, of course, Game Time, best tickets, best prices to get you in to see any event you want to see. You and I were like bouncing off the walls, getting ready for Sunday Night Football. Minnesota going to Detroit. Minnesota spends $2 million on the seats behind the bench, getting to their fans. I'm sure that got to Dan Campbell, and I'm sure he weaponized that at some point. But the Lions in the second half absolutely opened up a giant can of whoop ass. 31-9 is your final. The Lions secured the number one overall seed in the NFC, get the first round bye. Meanwhile, the Vikings, despite 14 wins, they got to go on the road in the first round of the playoffs. Well, they'll visit the LA Rams. Of course, there was something that big came out of that as Kevin O'Connell and Dan Campbell shake hands. Dan Campbell says, "We'll see you in 2 weeks." Is he right? Well,
yeah, I think he is. There's the one caveat I will say: that Jalen Hurts being in concussion protocol still does make you go, "Okay, that's not great." Green Bay is, well, they didn't play well, and a million things with them. Like, we know they could beat anybody on any given Sunday, and we saw it last year. So, look, I think last night's game was, and I tweeted this, I really believe Kevin O'Connell and to some extent Ben Johnson kept a lot in their bag. I thought Detroit went a little harder knowing they needed that bye. Just again, Terry Arnold gets hurt last night. Jahmyr Gibbs, played fantastic. He got rocked a little bit. And so I felt like the Lions, I don't want to say they emptied their bag either, because we know Ben Johnson's got quite a deep bag in terms of play calling. I felt like Minnesota defensively had a really good plan in the first half. I thought the dam broke eventually, which it always, in the NFL, like generally speaking, the dam always breaks on defense a little bit. You got to be able to, you still got to punch in your opportunities. Minnesota didn't, I don't want to say they played tight, but I thought they were too amped up for this game. I thought this is a good learning experience for a team that all year has handled the pressure well. They've won a lot of big games at home. It would have been nice to get a third game at home, but I felt like Sam was too hyped up. Frankly, Justin Jefferson was too hyped up. I thought Jefferson was pretty bad yesterday for his standard. Well, for his standard, he was terrible. But for any standard, Amik Robinson, like, no offense, is not prime Darrelle Revis. And even the Jefferson play that he got the most open all game, I know he got open on the one that Darnold missed him in the back of the end zone onto the right side on the right pylon. But the one completion he had, even then, was like, I know he flopped, but it was like he really didn't have a lot of separation there either. So, while you want to give Robertson credit, I felt like the Vikings were too hyped up, and I felt like O'Connell did not fully empty his bag. I thought Aaron Glenn was great last night for sure. Brian Flores had a really nice half. Overall, these two teams were kind of feeling each other out. It felt like a boxing match. Minnesota should have won this game, if we're being honest. 4 trips down in the red zone. Inside. Yep. They were pretty much inside the 5, inside the 10, no touchdowns, a couple field goals, missed it on a couple times. Sam was it felt like hesitant to make the mistake, which is fine in a lot of ways, but he was just high last night. And having watched Sam in person for a long time, when he's high, he's a tick off. And again, I don't think the Lions, Gibbs was special last night, but I don't think the Lions were special last night from an offensive perspective. Goff, the awful interception that Goff threw coming out, and Harrison Smith, again, the Vikings don't capitalize because they're kicking. That's one thing that came out of this game the last 2 weeks.
Yep.
I'll turn over to you here, but the kicking is a problem. The kickoff right before the half, huge game changer. I thought it was a big game changer. I thought Minnesota was feeling good about themselves. Hey, we're going to double up. End of the half, kick a field goal. We didn't play our best half, but we can come out here and score right away, and we can double up on you. And instead, Detroit kicks a field goal to end the half, and you're like, shoot, like, we're not going to. I truly felt like as long as Darnold's healthy, they come out of this game, and O'Connell's probably like, I'm almost kind of not happy we lost, but like, we can beat this team, and this feels like they need a third opportunity, and I think we very well may get that.
You were very good there on the Vikings, so I'll leave that over here. To me, we've talked about a lot in the last 5 or 6 weeks about the breaking point that Detroit had reached defensively because of all
I
the
know exactly where you're going with this one.
fans will be back. But
Yep.
Aaron Glenn had himself a night, and the pressure, constant pressure, zero blitzes, like threw more at Sam and got more pressure on Sam. I think helped sort of. He's feeling maybe a little bit too amped up, and now we've got pressure in his face, and now the ball's really starting to
They
fly
hit him a lot last night.
a lot, and I give him credit. He stood in there and took some hellacious hits. But look, we know this. It doesn't matter who you are. Tom Brady, Peyton Manning, pick your favorite quarterback. If you start hitting them early and often, it tends to carry an impact in the third and fourth quarters. It certainly did in this game. Aaron Glenn, though, was he in your bag. He was definitely in his bag. Everyone was joking on Twitter last night. He's given all the interviews, and he's going to have one with New Orleans now. He did a really terrific job there, and that was a big win for them. They needed the break. They're going to get the break. And who knows? We'll see what the Terry and Arnold situation is. We'll see if some of these injured guys can get back for them, but definitely a chance for them to catch their breath, and they deserve it. It's been a pretty.
I think the third matchup, if they get it, will be a better game. I thought the first game was excellent. Last night, I'm telling you, I just felt like there was so much anticipation, so much there. And Minnesota hasn't been in this type of game. And Detroit really has rarely, and definitely not at home. It was maybe the Rams game last year, but other than that,
yep.
The Bucs game didn't have a lot of hype during the playoffs last year because I think people just assumed they'd win, and then they go on the road to San Francisco, and like the Lions themselves got too hyped up, right? They played that great first half, and it all fell apart. So again, they needed it, but as you know, and I know these Patriots fans listen to this, and it felt a little. Very different, but it did have that feel of that Monday night game where the Jets just could not figure it out. They just kept shooting themselves in the foot, and the Patriots ran all over them. And it was like, wow, if these teams play a third time, and when you play a third time, we've seen Ravens Steelers. Look, that game's going to be disgusting on Saturday. Mm-hmm. But again, it's a third time, and the more you see somebody, the less you can get away with, and the more creative you are. And both these teams are super creative, so it'd be interesting if they do play a third time, scheme wise. Is O'Connell prepared? They didn't run enough screens last night. They didn't do some delayed handoffs, things like that. I felt like they didn't run the ball at all. And they were getting success. Like 4 yards a pop in the NFL is okay. Yep. And that's my one fear with play callers on the offensive side of the ball. And we'll talk about coaches here in a moment. But even McVay and Kyle and stuff, they either get very conservative or they abandon the run so fast. And it's like, Sam's really good at play action and taking those deep shots, and they're telling you, we're going to take 18 away, do something else. And they couldn't, and it was bad.
You might be too young to remember this. The chicks dig the long ball. Well, play callers dig the pass. It's just something, they get into this habit, and it's just a little bit sexier, right? They just, this little design, I have this little motion. He definitely fell into it. We talked about on Friday the idea of like, hey, I think you want to control the ball a little bit, and Aaron Jones should be a big part of that. Aaron went last night. He's definitely dealing with something, but regardless, I do agree with Dan Campbell. I think those two teams see each other in 2 weeks. There were two other games that ended up locking up playoff spots. Tampa Bay it was a pretty hard fought win against the Saints. The Saints gave them all they could handle and then some. Baker Mayfield struggled for a good long portion of this game, and then late he got going. And then, of course, Denver just absolutely buries Kansas City's backups. Ended my dreams of a Joe Burrow, Cincinnati Bengals sliding into the playoffs. That game was disgusting how lopsided it was. The Chiefs very happy to shut everybody down for that one. So the Bucs win. They win the division. Atlanta, it was a little neck and neck there. They were kind of going back and forth, but it didn't matter anyways. Atlanta losing in overtime to Carolina. So the Bucs win and get a home date against the Commanders. That could be incredible. That could be a really fun game.
That should be a fun game. A couple of things on these. I don't want to hit this too much. You wonder, does this, at least for Denver's sake, they have nothing to lose against Buffalo. I do think this will be a frisky game, at least for a half, maybe three quarters, because again, Denver is really good defensively. Does Surtain cause problems, on the outside as he neutralized one side of the field, and Denver can kind of, can they throw some blitzes at Allen? Can they use some different spies and different things to try to stymie them a little bit? They like to run the football in a physical game. I don't think they're going to be scared to go in there and muck it up a little bit. And hey, Bo Nix uses his legs once or twice, and hey, it's 13-10 Broncos with 4 to go in the third quarter. I still would pick Buffalo, but I'm just saying, while Burrow Allen would have been the sexy game, this is probably the best two teams of what we saw all season. I'll just give Bryce Young a shout out. I know Atlanta was playing for something. Carolina has really figured it out here. I don't know how good they're going to be next year because they still have so many holes in that roster. But Canales has kind of figured it out. That's a division win. It's a bad loss for Atlanta. Penix looks really good, and I think they have a quarterback, and this division has 3 quarterbacks, I think, and then I don't really know what's going to happen in New Orleans, but the two of the younger guys in this division, I think, have looked really good. Penix in short sample size and Bryce Young. So that's obviously the positive there. The Bucs, the 2015 Jets, Todd Bowles, same coach. They had Ryan Fitzpatrick, who got hot there. Very Baker Mayfield, gunslingerish. Baker's a better player, but Brandon Marshall had that career year. Mike Evans, very similar comp. Eric Decker, Chris Godwin, Ivory and Bucky Irving and Bilal Powell. They have so many similarities. The defense is the core of those championship game Jets teams. This defense is a lot of the core of that Super Bowl team. They just have such eerie similarities to each other where they could beat anybody on any given day, but they can look like absolute crap. And the last thing I'll say on this one, Jalen McMillan to have that penalty, which I understand the rule is annoying. I get it, but it's the rule. It's always been the rule of the last. It's a new rule and whatever, but everyone knows it. And that instead of one finger, he throws the two finger gun, whatever he wants to call it. To have gotten picked, where the Patriots and the Jets and two teams we cover probably should have taken him and didn't. Mm-hmm. And Malachi Corley, who just didn't play all year, and from all indications is going to be a problem going forward. And on the Patriots side, Javon Baker and these other, a lot of the other guys.
Polk,
and Polk, a lot of these other guys in that receiver room. McMillan, absolute stones on that catch. Baker, a special throw to, and then the game was over after that. And Mike Evans gets his $3 million bonus. So the Broncos-Chiefs game, again, maybe that builds some confidence. They go in irrational confidence mode going into Buffalo with nothing to lose. And the Bucs, again, can beat anybody. But they also, we can see, they can look really bad for some time, and they cannot afford to do that, whether it's the Commanders or going forward, after that.
I might be feeling an upset special. We'll see when it comes to Commanders and Bucs when we get there at the end of the week. But definitely one of the ones that I looked at and I was like, I could just – Washington has a good vibe right now, 100%. The Denver one is interesting because – and we'll get into this. I don't even have to. I'll say it right now. The Bills out-tanked the Patriots. The Bills were more than content to let you win and make sure you didn't get the number 1 pick. Well, I think Kansas City was obviously they're resting. They've got the number 1 overall seed. They want to get some of their guys a necessary break because they've been in so many one-score games. Flip side is like, Denver, the way they play
should
on
have
the
beaten
road.
them the
I know
first
it's
time.
Bo Nix on the road, but it's a really good defense. Could Surtain have a pick 6? Could they do some things to Josh Allen? And all of a sudden in the fourth quarter, it's a really tight game in Buffalo.
And it's not like Sean Payton's not a good coach.
Yeah.
He's a little annoying, but he's obviously a very good coach.
Yeah. So then all of a sudden, are you like, did they get a little tight there? Because they're this year was supposed to be a step back. Instead, it's been a step forward. And now you start thinking to yourself, they beat Kansas City. They can go beat Kansas City. Well, just be careful because I think Denver, in some ways, is a very difficult matchup for them, at least in terms of their offense. All right, it is playoff time. It's now or never. Don't miss out on the last few weeks of football here with Prize Picks, the best place to win cash while watching the playoffs. Over 10 million members, billions of dollars in awarded winnings. Prize Picks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. Just pick more or less on at least 2 players and up to 6 for a shot at 1,000 times your cash. Download the app today. Use the code CLNS to get $50 off instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Again, download the app today and you get $50 off instantly after you play your first $5 lineup just by using the code CLNS. Prize Picks, run your game. All right, let's turn our attention to the coaches who are coming, going, front offices that are staying that probably shouldn't be. Obviously, the big one comes about 90 minutes after the Patriots stumble into a 23-16 victory over the Buffalo Bills, drop from number 1 in the draft order to number 4. Jerod Mayo is fired. Was it unfair to a degree because of the situation that he inherited? his lack of experience, all those things. Yeah, Robert Kraft told us in his press conference about 3 hours ago. Again, we're taping this about 4:30 on Monday afternoon. I put Jerod in an untenable situation. I feel guilty for putting him there, but we have to move forward. They did not see the signs of progress. In fact, they saw regression, which is what we've been talking about quite a bit here.
Yeah.
I know that the fan base definitely influenced this, and Robert always references, well, I'm first and foremost a fan. No, you're a billionaire now. I mean, I know you want to win, but it's no longer your life's work.
It's not really the same thing.
Yeah, but there's the mixture of the anger and the apathy, and there was a lot of apathy. It's a half-empty building the last 2 weeks. When I drove into the stadium, it was the easiest drive I've had since COVID. I kid you not. I leave the game for the games at the exact same time. A 1 o'clock game, I leave my house at 10:30. Usually takes 40 minutes because of traffic. I was in the stadium in 25 minutes, going up the elevator, like just breezed right on in. The feeling in the stadium yesterday too, they score points and it was like, oh no, you're not supposed to do that. And that's not a place you ever want to be, I think. So look, Mayo was out over his skis the entire year. The job was too big for him. And again, part of that's not his fault. 5 years of experience as an assistant coach, not even a coordinator. The whole succession plan was nonsensical because the guy that he was going to succeed basically didn't talk to him for the last year that they were together, their last season. So who exactly was teaching him the ropes of being an NFL head coach? Nobody. The ownership can't do that. Yeah, he was having meetings with them all during last year, but that can't prepare you for what you're supposed to do. And then, on top of that, he was hired as a culture/leadership guy, right? This was more about that than it was the X's and O's part of it. And the culture is a mess. And the attitude was a mess. And the leadership, the messaging from 1 week to the next. And I'm not just talking about to us in the press, where, as we've illustrated, he made a million missteps with the press, but it was also behind closed doors. And when guys don't know what's expected of them, or they're told it's one thing and then the next day it changes, like, you can't set the proper example and set the program in the right direction if you're constantly changing the direction that you're going. You're changing how you treat players. So between the on-field product, the dysfunction behind the scenes as well, there's definitely some push and pull between the front office and the coaching staff. Coaching staff basically saying, you didn't give us enough players. I mean, what are we talking about? And the front office saying, you didn't develop anybody we gave you. Drake May was the one rookie who obviously elevated, and quite frankly, he's talented enough where it probably
no
wouldn't
offense,
have.
Joe Milton also had success yesterday.
Yeah, right. It probably wouldn't have mattered who was in charge. He was still going to be somewhat successful on the playing field because he's the number 3 overall pick. He's 6'4", 225 pounds, and a pretty good head on his shoulders. So it is quick. They want to make this decision very quickly. They want to move on very quickly. Robert Kraft said that in his press conference, like, we're going to move fast here. They requested an interview with Ben Johnson. Apparently he's agreed to do that. Obviously they're very interested in Mike Vrabel. But I wonder how you look at it, because I think we've talked about it quite a bit, and hemming and hawing like that. Should they? Will they do it? Will they actually have the guts to do it? But at the end of the day, I just think it was too clear. You couldn't run it back and expect that it could be any better next year. And then all of a sudden you've wasted another year of Drake May's rookie contract.
Yeah, I will say Robert Kraft has built up enough equity. They are not getting crushed anywhere near as hard as I thought they were going to by the talking heads on these debate shows. At least I haven't seen much. Even, Stephen A. Smith, who normally is quite outspoken about a lot of these different, kind of situations, was like, yeah, it's because Mike Vrabel's out there. And I think everyone's aware of why he got fired from on-field media, and also who else is available. Where I'm not going to cut the Patriots slack is both guys were available last year. Ben Johnson was available last year. They had the number 3 overall pick. They had all this cap space. They had all these draft picks. Mike Vrabel was available last year and clearly wanted the job, and no interest, because we had Jerod, and this is a handpicked thing and the whole thing. And you had a great article, obviously, kind of detailing where this even came about, the origin of, Jerod Mayo being a head coach and the whole thing. Look, I understand why they did it. Again, makes total sense. I've been on the show since July saying I'm pretty sure they got the head coach wrong and he hasn't coached the game yet.
Yep.
And it's not like a new thing. I'm not saying it is. But I also think it's definitely a little bit of BS to pretend like the front office doesn't play a role in this. The coaching staff around Jerod Mayo, that a lot of these people that are not his guys played in. And one guy who is his guy was one of his biggest downfalls this year was the one guy who was his guy in DeMarcus Covington, who I thought of all the DCs in the league might have had the worst year. This was Devin McCourty had a really interesting quote on, I don't know if it was on NBC or if it was on Kay Adams' show. He talked about the last couple years there, right? Devin's, he retired in 22 or 23. 22. He's like, a lot of the same groups here, and we were still a top 5 defense. We didn't have that many good pieces. They actually have arguably some better pieces on this defense. There was no Christian Gonzalez since Stephon Gilmore left. Like, it's not like there's a lot of bad pieces on this defense. Don't get me wrong. I'm just saying, like, Devin basically made the point of, well, Jerod deserves another shot in some ways. Other ways, like, this defense got so much worse. And the offense, while there's not a lot of talent for sure, still didn't. I mean, no offense, Joe Milton looked just as good as anybody like a quarterback. I know it's the Bills' backup and all these different things. My point being, they won a game with Jacoby Brissett. They won a game with Joe Milton. They won a game with Drake May. It was like, it didn't really matter who's a quarterback. They kind of were the same team every week, which compliment maybe, also maybe an insult. Yeah. The Ben Johnson piece is really interesting of this. You've been on this for a while. Would I put it at 96% Mike Vrabel's not the Jets head coach, unfortunately, but well, the Patriots head coach? Yeah, I probably would.
Yeah.
Would I be super excited if I was a Patriots fan at the idea of a lot of the same guys in the front office, a lot of the Patriot retreads potentially? I'm not saying that's what's going to happen. Mike's, from all the reporting, Zach Rosenblatt's article in The Athletic is detailed how Mike's open to, doesn't have to be McDaniels and a lot of these guys, which is great. I actually think he'd do well to, expand his reach outside of just some of the Tennessee guys and some of the Patriots guys. But there's also a good shot that you could sit here and go, yeah, if they run out, it's Mike Vrabel, Shane Bowen, who's likely to get let out of his contract, and Josh McDaniels. Like, how excited are you about the general staff? Or is it like Vrabel's definitely an upgrade by a lot, but how much better is Josh McDaniels right now? I'm not saying he is or isn't. How much better is he right now than Alex Van Pelt, who had familiarity with Drake May? Or, those are the questions I may have. And if they're not going to have a GM going into the offseason, how appealing is that job for Mike at the same time? Like, I don't know. I have questions about, like, if you're going to do this thing, do it right. And really interview GM candidates, really interview head coaching candidates. Ben Johnson with Drake May is really appealing. And I don't even know that Ben's going to be a great head coach. There's a little Adam Gase vibes there where it's just one of his mentors, and that's part of why he didn't want to interview with the Jets, amongst other reasons, obviously. I'd like to see them do a full real search and be like, hey, Mike, we're going to probably hire you here, but let us just talk to a couple candidates. You go talk to a couple teams. We're right here for you. We'll match maybe whatever offer or anything like that nature. Ben Johnson seems to be interested in this job. Right. And if I'm a Patriots fan, I'm like, hey, I've had a defensive coordinator as a head coach for 25 years, 25 years plus, right, at this point. We finally have a quarterback that post Brady that we feel like could be a dude, not like could hold the fort down, could be a guy. I'd at least consider it. I'd at least say, like, what's it going to take from a Ben Johnson perspective?
I always go back to, and look, I talked to a half dozen people around the league in front offices, and every one of them was like, Vrabel, it's Vrabel, it's Vrabel. Yeah. Everyone, that is the vibe out there. That's the vibe we've been sort of sharing here, that it was easier to make the move off of Jerod. And again, not that he deserved another year, but easier to make the move knowing that they had someone who was interested in their job last year, who they have familiarity with, which is a huge thing for them. And maybe it shouldn't be, but it is. And okay, so we got this because we feel like we have this in our back pocket. But I always go back to the Pittsburgh Steelers, who obviously have had the same, 3 coaches in 60 years, right? Or whatever it's been, 45 years, Chuck Noll, Bill Cowher, and now Mike Tomlin. When Bill Cowher retired, the job was supposed to be Ken Wisenhunt's. He was the offensive coordinator. He had been groomed. They felt like he was a Steeler. He understood the whole thing. But they did the search. They did what you're supposed to do. And Mike Tomlin came into the building and absolutely floored them. And they looked at each other and said, that's the guy. And it was like, well, wait, you all along, you thought it was going to be Wisenhunt. Well, if Ben Johnson comes in here, sits face to face with Robert and Jonathan, Elliott Wolf and Alonzo Highsmith, apparently also going to be involved in the interviews, which again is a little odd, then yeah, you damn well better consider it. Like, you have a preconceived notion. Yes, I understand why. I think he's a good culture builder, which, as we just talked about, your culture is eroding. However, if Ben comes in and blows your doors off, maybe you got to roll the dice on that. It just will be very interesting to see how that plays out. Because
I just think, I assume Mike's going to be the coach, and he's an awesome hire. I think he's the number one candidate on the market, and it'd be a great coup for the Patriots and all that stuff. No question about it. I also think he did and does have legit interest in the Jets job. I don't think it was a pure leverage thing. Do I think it got Robert's attention? For sure. Do I think that there's a chance he would have taken the Jets job had the Patriots not been open? Absolutely. So I saw some reporting. I'm not sure that's entirely accurate. I just think they should do this the right way. They have not done a full head coach search since the late 90s. At some point, and even then it was kind of it was a coup getting Bill anyways, and it was a coup before that, trading Bill Parcells and the whole thing, and Pete Carroll, and at some point it would probably be refreshing for the fan base to be like, hey, let's talk to 3 or 4 people. Look, there's a good chance that we get Mike Vrabel, Ben Johnson, and a few people to satisfy the Rooney Rule, and that's what's going to be. And that is what it is, right? And I'm not going to sit there and it's not sour grapes. It's just it's an interesting process.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know. I think there'd be an attractive job. It might be the number one job in the market. You should at least make sure you get the right guy, because, like I said, coaching hires, it's not always the best coach. It's the coach at the right place at the right time. And I don't know, Ben Johnson with Drake May would be pretty scary to any other team in the AFC. Like, wow, if he can really be as good of a play caller here, think what it would do with Jared Goff. Drake May's 20 times talent that Jared Goff is.
Yeah. Again, it's just something to do their due diligence, be smart about this thing, and take all the information in. All right. Obviously, we were talking about the playoffs coming this weekend. You want to go to a playoff game? I got the answer for you. Just go to Game Time. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets to find the best value. And the thing is, you go on the app. Where are the tickets? You don't have to keep resetting your search engine. It's all there for you. It shows you the vision, the view from your seats. You can understand, am I obstructed view? Am I in the back row? Am I next to the crapper? I don't know. All those things that you want to know, that's what you do. And always 24-hour returns guaranteed, and on-time ticket delivery. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. And create that account. Redeem the code CLNS for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last-minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed. I wasn't going to talk to you about this, but very quickly, as we go on the coaching front. So Vrabel, Rivera, Rex Ryan. Now we see requested interviews with Brian Flores and Josh McCown. Other names mentioned: Joe Brady, Matt Nagy, Arthur Smith, Brian Greasy, Vance Joseph, Bobby Slowick. I would chuckle a little bit if that's where you ended on. What are your thoughts on that group of candidates as they're casting a pretty wide net?
Yeah, for sure. Aaron Glenn as well.
Yes.
I think you'll see Liam Cohen and potentially Jesse Minter get interview requests as well. Maybe some college guys we'll see on that front. A lot of people have asked me about Sark this morning, and I think that it'd be a great fit, but for reasons off the field, obviously, as everyone is very much aware of what happened at USC, I don't think New York's not the best place for somebody that's had the problems he's had. He's figured it out. He's been an incredibly college coach. I'd have serious questions if that was going to work. I think of the names you mentioned, Brian Flores, I talked about this on my other show. I think Josh McCown should have gotten an interview because he hasn't been in that building. And six, 7 years now. You basically interview him as a head coach, but can he be our offensive coordinator and go with Brian Flores? I think the Flores McCown thing is probably next to Vrabel, the next set of that's really appealing. And Aaron Glenn and potentially someone from that Lions staff, that is appealing, obviously. After that, the list is there's some names on there that are big stayaways for me. Arthur Smith's a big stay away, and I think there's no shot he's taking the Jets job. He's turned them down twice. The Jets turned him down once. He was the runner-up in 2021. He turned down the Jets this past offseason to come on as be the offensive coordinator, but without the title for Nate Hackett. Bobby Slowick is the absolute biggest stay away. Joe Brady's interesting to me to see what he looks like in an interview, because he was the hotshot name 4 or 5 years ago and kind of fell off a cliff a little bit. He's worked his way back up into that prestige of interviews now. He'll be an interesting one for sure. Division rival there. There's some other names on there that are interesting. The GM list has been shorter that they've requested, but they've requested some serious names. That Mike Borgonzi is one that really stands out. Mike Greenberg are the two that the big names that have been thrown around. There's other ones there, Ray Farmer and some guys from the Eagles, and you'll see a bunch of other ones requested, but those two stand out. Borgonzi, big time connections with Mike Vrabel. And you wonder, is that a Patriots spot? Is that a Jets spot? Is it, hey, the Patriots are wowed by Ben Johnson. Did the Jets all of a sudden pivot and say, Ryan Cowden's great, but, he's probably 12th on the list of actual GMs you really want. He's more just you want Vrabel, so you're going there. Does that happen? Mike Greenberg, does he bring a Liam Cohen with him and a couple of guys in the Bucs front office? So a lot of interesting names. The Jets have requested a ton of people. Ben Johnson was not one of them. He showed no interest in the job. They've known that for weeks. So that I'm not sure why it was reported that way. They had no interest in him because he had no interest in them, and they weren't going to waste their time. And you can't get turned down by the girl if you don't ask her out. So the Jets have been all over this. And as much as I'd like to give them the credit, you fired your coach almost 3 months ago. I would hope you'd have a list at this point.
That's absolutely fair. The pairing that you suggest, Flores McCown, is an interesting one to me. But I think as we talked about Flores,
as long as it doesn't mean Ryan Grigson, Flores, and McCown, that's
the Ryan Grigson thing. To just go back and
research. His quarterback retired at 29. What are we doing here?
Yeah, I don't just don't do it.
Vikings read it,
or if you want to, he would have to have one hell of a plan, and he would have to be pretty far from the guy that he was in Indianapolis for me to even consider.
There's some stuff on Vikings Reddit that claims that Kwesi doesn't actually do anything. Ryan Grigson's the brains behind the operation. I'd like whatever drugs you're taking is how I would counter that one.
I like that. All right. Elsewhere around the league, Doug Peterson, he was fired, which I think, look, we've expected this we figured it was going to happen in season. I guess to the Jags' credit, they were like, no, we're paying him. He can, he can go the thing through. Trent Baalke, though, the GM stays, which immediately raises an eyebrow because they've had problems before attracting candidates because of Baalke's involvement. Interesting to me, Shad Khan talked a short time ago. Again, we're taping this on Monday. He called the team predictable. These predictable.
Owners, I'll just say this. Woody Johnson spoke for 25 seconds yesterday and sounded these guys got to stop. These guys got to stop talking.
He won a game. He was happy you won the game.
He was happy they won. And then Shad Khan goes on and said, well, this isn't an Aaron Rodgers situation. These guys got to stop talking. Every time, I'm serious, because when they stay out of the way, look, we never hear from the Hunt family ever.
Right.
They have their own problems, but we never hear from them. And we hear from Andy Reid and Brett Veach, and that's it. And for the Bucs, we hear from their front office. We hear from their head coach. From the Patriots, sometimes just enough. I don't need to hear the owners talk because they always stick their foot in their mouth. And you see why a lot of these guys hire poorly, because guys like Trent Baalke can stay in jobs for 6 coaches because
it just goes to show that. And I went through the list. The coaching
is horrible.
So Jim Harbaugh, obviously, when he was in San Francisco, that was the big one. So
he was a no-brainer. Was he not a no-brainer at the time? Am I misremembering it?
No, you're absolutely right. He was smoking red hot. After that, Jim Tom Sula, one and done. Chip Kelly, one and done. Urban Meyer didn't even make it through a full season. And Doug Peterson. So he's been a debacle.
It's not just that. He's had 3 or 4 top 7 picks. He's had 2 number 1 overall picks in the last 4 years,
He hasn't been able to
resulting
shift
in
the
one
roster.
fluky playoff win. I thought Ben Johnson was a lock for that job, and now I don't know what is that really that good of a job? Am I missing something? They don't have a ton of cap space.
I'm telling you, you know what as
You
soon
better
as I
love
heard that,
Lawrence.
soon as the too predictable thing, I thought to myself, all right, he definitely is going to go offense again. And now I'm thinking it's Liam Cohen, young, up and coming
Yeah.
guy. You've been able to see it up close and personal, just in the state of Florida. So there's a lot of press that he's probably reading and picking up. And so
I don't get it. It's
yeah,
the
that
perfect opportunity to just start over.
Clean it up. Who didn't clean it up? And I think I don't want to say I am surprised. The Giants decide to stay with Joe Shane, the general manager, and Brian Dable. I thought one might get bounced, and I was leaning Dable as give Joe a chance to pick the quarterback in the top 5. But we're going to reset the quarterback position. The owner, Mara, I thought he was excellent today. He was very honest. He's like, I'm trying to stay patient, but my patience has basically run out.
Yeah.
But he's going to run these guys back. So Joe Shane says he doesn't think that they have to make the playoffs. They just have to show signs of improvement. Based on where they are this year, I mean, what is improvement? 4 wins, 5 wins based on the type of season they had. But I thought they would have done something there. I think it's kind of foolhardy to run the same group back because you had the good first year and it has gone completely in the other direction. And you don't have a quarterback, and your roster construction is I think it's pretty crappy.
The all-time, this is the worst John Mara quotes we've heard since he's been the owner. Just destroying the football guys, but then doesn't fire them. Says that I don't want to be this angry and disappointed next year. Mike Garafolo actually reported there is a playoff mandate. And then Joe Shane goes in and says there's not a playoff mandate. And they don't regret quarterback, but they can't figure out.
Shane's not doing a good job in front of cameras.
He should. Brandon Beane's really good at the media thing.
Yes.
Anyone that's been in the combine and these different things, he's very good at. He operates the floor well. I don't listen. This is again a perfect chance to start over. I understand they never got their quarterback, but they didn't have to re-sign Daniel Jones. So, the argument they never got their quarterback, yes, they never drafted theirs, but they picked they picked it because
they picked him. They had him.
They had a year to evaluate, and they
liked him at 9-6-1 in a playoff win and said, I can win with this guy. And they gave him a hefty contract that, they had their outs in it, but makes no sense.
It's just, I don't know. Bad organizations are doing a lot of dumb things the last 24 hours.
On to that, the Colts sticking with both Chris Ballard, the general manager, who's been there 9 years. They haven't won a playoff game in 5, and I believe they just have the one playoff win. And Shane Steichen, who's 17-17 in 2 years. You can make the case for Steichen to me. Last year it looked good. This year, there's a lot of Anthony Richardson problems going on in that building. But that's Chris Ballard's pick. And did they not vet this kid? Did they not ask the right questions? Did they really think that he could come in and by year 2 be an NFL passer? Because he's not an NFL passer yet. Irsay, I applaud the loyalty to a degree, but this is probably a place where you should have said, Shane stays. We're getting a new GM because look at my roster. It's just not nearly good enough.
Yeah, or again, this is we have not started over in such a long time. Let's just wipe the slate clean. I like Steichen a lot. He might be a better coordinator. We've run into this problem a lot. We talk about Raheem Morris a lot. There's a lot of Todd Bowles. Maybe it's, I don't know. I don't know if Brian Flores is Josh McDaniels, all these guys. I don't know. Some guys are just better as coordinators. I like Steichen a lot. I'm probably higher on him than I should be based on the results. He's a 500 coach. He's fun. Ballard's done some really nice things. I do feel like he's lived a lot off the Sam Darnold trade of trading back to 6 with Quentin Nelson and Darius Leonard and that whole draft. And he's had a lot of really nice guys hey, Michael Pittman in round 2 is a really nice and creative pick. And, and we got this guy on day 3, we got this guy on day 3. And hey, Josh Downs at round 3, look at him. That's great. But also you continue, you've not hit a quarterback and you've had 100 chances at hitting a quarterback. The Wentz trade was horrendous. And there's one GM opening right now. And I think the Colts would have gotten a better candidate than the Jets will for GM. This felt like the easy, wow, we could get Ed Dodds right in your building. Has been a guy who everyone's been waiting to like either take the Colts job, and he doesn't really ever interview. And you have questions maybe why you're not interviewing. But I don't know. Like, I just feel like it was a perfect, hey, promote Ed Dodds for a year, run it with Steichen. If it doesn't work, we blow it all up after the year. And instead, you're just going to run it back. And the one issue I have with Ballard is every year we talk about they have all these picks and they have all this cap space and they never do anything with it. And it's like, at some point, that's great. You hoard assets and you hoard cap space. But if you don't spend it, no one will take your money. Who cares? We saw with the Patriots this year. That's so great. You have all this cap space. But if Brandon Ayuk's like, I'd rather literally take $4 million a year less to not go to you, or we'll see this offseason who the Patriots target or any of the Colts and these teams. But like at some point, man, like the Colts really gonna run it back with Gus Bradley too. Like, well, I don't get
if I'm
it.
if I'm in the division, I'm begging.
I hope they run it back.
Pretty please. Yeah, it's a great point. And to the money thing, the Patriots have 131 million, 117 to 131, depending on what site you believe. That's the amount of cap space. Who are you going to get? Like,
yeah, you still got to spend the money.
Yeah, you got to spend it, and you're going to have to overspend. And to get someone like T. Higgins, where I think there's going to be 4 to 6 teams at the very least, if he gets to the market, they're going to want to pay him number one money. You're probably going to have to pay him more than those guys are going to pay him. And are you willing to do that? You know, they set the line with Calvin Ridley. You and I were texting. I told you I would call Tennessee. If I strike out in free agency, I'd call Tennessee because essentially Ridley's got one more year on his deal of guaranteed money, and just say, I'll live with that for a year. He's still a good player, maybe not a great player, but I'm baffled by that. I was convinced that Indianapolis was going to do something different. Finally, Miami, Mike McDaniel, general manager Chris Greer stay. There had been some rumblings that maybe Greer would retire and sort of move into an advisory role. They're staying. I'm fine with giving Mike McDaniel another year. Their roster's in this weird place, and that's actually where I want to go. I'm going to just side profiles here. Tyreek Hill, I'm out, bro.
Yeah, Jalen Ramsey just requested basically a trade on Instagram too.
So they realized that their roster is in
Both
flux.
guys signed mega highest paid player in the league extensions like 4 months ago, by the way.
Yep. So then maybe they made a mistake with McDaniel. What's going on in that room, in that culture?
That quote from Tyreek was like, "Oh, I had an injury, whatever, and I don't want to be. I'm out." McDaniel's like, "Nope, not a new injury. You just took yourself out of the game because you didn't want to play anymore."
Bradley Chubb
problem.
came out and said, "Hey, each guy's going to do what he's going to do, but we want guys that are willing to fight and press forward."
Yeah, well, they don't, because the weather goes under 50 degrees and they turn into a pumpkin every year. I understand Snoop Huntley is who he is as a quarterback. The Jets were a corpse the first drive of the game. Like they were, and I think they saw that the Dolphins wanted no part of being there yesterday, and they were like, let's go have some fun. And Rodgers was good and whatever, and the whole thing. They have a problem, and Stephen Ross is 84 years old. I'm really shocked he's been this patient. I think maybe he's like scarred by like being maybe too aggressive, obviously, with chasing Sean Payton and Brady and we know the whole story. And obviously not ethical in a lot of the ways he was doing stuff. But Chris Greer has like 27 NFL lives, and he's, again, multiple coaches now, multiple quarterbacks, and multiple. I felt like Miami was in a spot where like, hey, I don't know. If you're Miami, do you try to start over and like the next year is like hey, we're going to kind of get what we can out of Tua and Waddle. We'll trade Tyreek and Ramsey, and we'll trade all these guys, and Armstead will retire, and we'll just kind of like we'll take our punches for a year, and we'll stack draft capital for 2026 and hope we can start over. But is Chris Greer the guy you want to be the one taking all these guys and Noah Egbenanagi and whatever, like all these different? Do you want that? Do you want that draft class again? I don't know. I think McDaniel's probably a coordinator. He's done some nice things, but the team resembles him, and he looks cold on the sideline a lot. He looks like he's in over his head more than he should for a guy that is very smart, very talented, very charismatic.
And now he's coached a decent amount of NFL games.
He's 3 years in now. It's a bigger sample size. So, yeah, I felt like a lot of these teams made a mistake, and I think there's good candidates on both sides of GM and head coach that these jobs would have been more appealing than some of the other ones, the Saints and maybe even the Bears and maybe even the Jets. Like, I don't know. I'm not particularly sure I get it.
Yeah, I thought there was going to be more movement today, and
even the Bears requested McCarthy, and that maybe puts Jerry in a spot where now it's, someone wants my guy, let me extend him.
Right, I got to extend him, or I got to let him talk to them, and then it appears that Antonio Pierce survives and gets a second full season with the Raiders, as he came to the podium today and was like, I haven't been told anything different. I'll give you one other one before we go. The Titans sent Brian Callahan out there to talk, and I think Brian Callahan's going to survive this, but he had not yet talked to the owner, which, again, the timing of it is we're going to run you out here in the middle of the afternoon, so we've had time to do this. Is he back, or did you just talk to everybody and then we're about to fire you in the next 24 hours? And why were you? I mean, you're running into it there where Jeff Ulbrich is talking to the media
it's gross
about the team and going forward. It's like, I know he's going to interview for the job, but he's not getting it. He's not going to be there. Like, that's, I don't know. If I was Jeff Ulbrich, I'd be like, peace out. I'm not doing this bull crap.
Why is he answering questions of the state of the franchise?
Right, exactly. But you don't have a GM, and your owner did his 25 seconds. So, all right, that's going to put a wrap on this this Monday's edition of the All 32 Pod. We will be back at the end of the week to preview playoff weekend. I'm looking forward to. We can kind of start a hyper focus now on a few games here. Good slate. I don't plan on moving too much on Saturday and Sunday. Me to the fridge, beer, nachos, those sorts of things. A reminder to like, listen, subscribe, do all those things, rate, review. You get this wherever you get your podcast. And of course, you can see this on YouTube as well. He's Will Parkinson. I'm Mike Jerry. We'll see you at the end of the week.